We're going to look at the first two chapters of the first book of Samuel. So if you'll go there, and we're going to be looking at the life of a tremendous believer who is a woman. And women are wonderful examples throughout the Bible. And I'd like to share with you the life of this one. And there's no great drama going on, and there isn't great wars, or there isn't great famines and stuff like that going on. It's life. It's life that she's experiencing. And she is one of two wives of another believer of the house of Israel. And her particular issue is that she has no children. And of course, that meant a lot in those days, because it was through the children that you had security and love in your old age. And so therefore, children were very, very valuable and looked on as a great blessing from God. And so there's two wives, and let's see here in verse 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramath Zophim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, and the son of, you get the idea. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, which can be translated from the Hebrew as grace. And the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, and didn't say how many, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. So their tradition, the thing that they did every year, was they would go and sacrifice to the Lord every year. And the two sons of Eli, okay, now we're starting to see the intermixture of two families. The two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. That's who is accepting the sacrifices and doing the ritual of the sacrifices to the Lord at Shiloh. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Benaiah, his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters. So now there was at least two sons and at least two daughters. Those are the plural. Portions. In other words, this is for you to sacrifice. This is your gift. And sometimes when we have children growing up and we take them to fellowship, to get them into the habit of understanding about abundant sharing, we give them money to decide, okay, now you can abundantly share this. I remember Jeff did that with his kids, and Johnny would abundantly share to when he came to fellowship when he was a young man. And this is what he was doing. He was giving them portions. But unto Hannah, he gave a worthy portion, or double portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. Now, in the Old Testament, a lot of times God was credited with things that weren't going wrong, as well as for the blessings. But they didn't understand that there was a spiritual war going on. There's just two spiritual kingdoms, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of the adversary. So because they didn't understand that, God got credit for both. And her adversary also provoked her sore. Now, who was the adversary? Well, understanding that word adversary really means rival. in this case. And who was her rival? Well, any man that's had two wives at the same time understands this problem. I have never experienced that, but there's a rivalry in this case between the two wives. And the one wife with children was kind of poking at Hannah and causing an irritation for her, obviating that she had no children.
Rachel and Leo had that with
Yeah. Yeah. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when he went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. And therefore she wept and did not eat. Then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons?
Yeah. Little ego there.
Yeah, he's trying to make her feel good, but it sounds a little weird. Hey, So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. Okay, so he's at the entrance that goes into the temple. And he was the chief priest at that time. And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid and remember me, and not forget thy handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. Remember, there was another man who was, this was part of the vow about not cutting his hair. You remember who he was? Samson, right. So this was one of those things that indicated that this person had been dedicated to God. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. And he didn't put lipstick on her lips. It just means that he observed that she was moving her lips and not saying anything out loud. Okay. I don't know. Have you ever seen people who kind of are doing that? They make their mouth movements, but they don't actually are not saying it. Well, she was doing that.
My grandma used to do it with the razor.
Yeah. Now Hannah, she spoke in her heart only, her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought that she had been drunken. He was looking at it 5 senses wise. And Eli said unto her, how long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thine handmaiden for a daughter of Belial. Now, who was Belial? Who was that guy? He was the god that was representative of the adversary, the devil. Yeah, they were looking at him as something or someone to pray to other than God. And that Belial would be the ones who met their needs. Of course, he had a few extra things that he wanted, was child sacrifice, those kind of things. And it was a very sensual type of worship that he was getting. But the children of Belial and the children of God were coexisting at the same time in Israel. Israel always had this problem. Since they went into the land, they started marrying the daughters of the Philistines, or the people of the land. And they were worshipers of Belial. And so when you bring that into your family, it gets passed on. For out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. This made her feel pretty good. And she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. So she believed his words. She turned her heart around. She understood that God was going to answer her prayers. And they arose up in the early morning and worshiped before the Lord, and returned and came into their house in Ramah, and Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. They had sex, as husbands and wives do, but this time it took. This time it took.
Good egg.
Yeah. My dad, when he remarried after my mom and dad divorced, they had 20 some years of marriage that they tried to have children. And then all of a sudden, bingo. And she remembers, she told me the story that she told the doctor when he told her she was pregnant. She said, you mean he's poking that thing to me after all these years, and I finally take him serious?
That's funny.
Yeah, and they had a beautiful child. Anyway, therefore it came to pass, when the time was come, about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel. Now, was Samuel kind of an important figure in the Bible? He was a great prophet, very instrumental in many wonderful things that God had done. Because I have asked him of the Lord. So if she hadn't believed, there wouldn't have been a Samuel. If there wouldn't have been a Samuel, there'd been a whole new story for Israel. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vows. But Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child is weaned, and when I bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide how long? Forever. And Elkanah and her husband said unto her, do what seemeth thee good, tarry until thou have weaned him, only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And she slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. And this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent unto the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. So she had dedicated Samuel to the service of the Lord, and he was given to the priest there to raise up in the word. And then she gives this wonderful poem. I would recommend that you read that sometime. It's just a tremendous heart outflowing. But what she's praying is that God can turn things around. God can bring the rich into low humbleness, and he can bring the people who are poor to great riches. He can change everything. There's no circumstances that you're in that he can't improve. I thought that was a great prayer. Now let's go to chapter 2, verse 12. And it said, well, 11. And Elkanah went to Ramah and his house, and the child did minister unto the Lord before Eli the priest. So he was an apprentice. Verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were what? The sons of Belial. Well, I thought they were priests. Well, they were priests by birth, but in their heart, they had given it to Belial. Now something.
Yeah.
So it isn't, God's service is a matter of the heart. It isn't a matter of birth like it was in the Old Testament. The priesthood could only come out of the tribe of Levi. And the high priest could only come out of the descendants of Aaron, who was a Levite. But just being by birth doesn't mean you're serving God. And that was the case for these two guys. Now, what some of the things that they would do is that when the people came to sacrifice, it was normal for the priest to receive food from the sacrifices, from the offerings. They would take a portion of that. But what they were doing was taking the best of the best. And the people saw it, the people knew it. And then they would not only take that, but sometimes they would actually threaten the people for what they were going to take if they didn't agree with it. So they, what was the result of that? Is the people started to hate sacrificing.
Yeah.
You know, we can have people who are representing God, and if they aren't doing it right, if they're hurting God's people, what is this? What happens is they cause the people to sin against God because their heart is turned from doing it from the heart to doing it begrudgingly. But they still think they need to do it, but it isn't from the heart. So that is really a disaster. And it can happen today as well. When you have ministers that aren't caring for the hearts of people, that are only looking out after, well, in some cases, the profit of the ministry or the profit to themselves. So a true minister is a servant of God and serves God's people. So these guys weren't, and they were causing the people to sin and get that attitude. But I want you to end up here. By the way, the Lord takes away that family responsibility from Eli. He is not the one who's sinning as far as these specific sins. But what he didn't do was he didn't control his children. He should never have placed them in positions like this because he knew that they weren't doing it right. So he was the one who was actually had the Lord kind of corrected. But I want you to look at verse 21. What happens for Hannah? And the Lord visited Hannah so that she conceived and bare 3 sons and 2 daughters. She understood that she was conceiving because of God. And she dedicated the first child to the service of the Lord. Her heart was there. And what happens? Did she lose the child and never had another experience of having children? No. God took care of her heart, took care of her life. But this is what I see in Hannah, a woman of great faith. And because she had that great faith, look what happened for Israel with Samuel, and also to clean out those 2 sons of Belial that had worked their way into the temple. So that's what I wanted to share with you.